17.
Shirley?
58.
What is your relationship to one another?
My mum.
My daughter.
Do you or did you suffer from body dysmorphia and or an eating disorder? And if so, which one?
Yes, and I had anorexia.
How long have you suffered from it?
From when I was 11 until, I don't know, like when I was like 15 was when it was like bad, from when I was 11 until I was 15.
How did it start?
When I was younger in primary school, I struggled quite a lot to make friends and I was bullied, and then I went to secondary school and I struggled to make friends, and I already had like a lot of issues with anxiety, and then I think I sort of started like becoming more aware of social media, and like body image, and like how, I don't know, I became more aware of the way I look, and then I started to stop eating and like skip meals. And when I first started, it was like I couldn't, so I'd feel shit and then I wouldn't eat, and then I'd end up eating loads, and then I wouldn't eat for ages again, and then I'd pretty much not eat all day at school, and then I'd come home and I'd eat loads of food. And I didn't gain weight. I think I basically lost a little bit of weight, but not very much, because obviously I was still eating enough. It was just how I was thinking about food was not healthy at all. And then when I was just before I turned 12, I stopped doing that and I started eating like really small meals, and then gradually they got smaller and smaller, and then I was basically, when I was like just after I turned 12, like a few months after I turned 12, it got really bad and I ended up in hospital. And then yeah, that was basically how it started.
How did you realise, Shirley, that Stella had an eating disorder?
There has been another family member that's had the disorder, and I've been through that experience, observing what the initial sort of clues were, and when Stella started presenting certain behaviours, I think it was an advantage for me because I could recognise those and think that something's not right here. So once that happened, then Stella and I began to have a dialogue, although it was really, really testy and confrontational, because I was asking her what was going on. And in my own mind, I think I knew that it was the onset of that. In spite of what Stella was saying, everything was fine. I knew that there was other behaviours that were presenting that weren't right.
Did you ever had an eating disorder, Shirley?
I think I've suffered from body dysmorphia, aspects of anorexia and bulimia, and that I have overeaten and then felt shit and then undereaten in the same way that Stella has described, but I never went to extremes, although I think the feelings that I had associated with especially overeating and compensating by restricting afterwards, were kind of always been there, really. Yeah.
Stella, do you think that body dysmorphia came first or that it came after?
I think I did probably have some body image issues, but they probably became much worse once I started to starve myself. But I don't know, I think once I started starving myself, it was like that became more of a focus, whereas before it was more, I just hated myself, and then that's why I started, I guess.
Do you think you still have now body dysmorphia, or it's gone?
I don't think I do, but then when I talk to my friends, they're like, I think you do. Because I don't mind how I look most of the time, but then I'll say stuff like, oh, I don't know, like just anything like, oh, I'm not skinny or whatever, and they're like, no, you are, or whatever. I don't know, just yeah, I don't really know anymore.
If we take the definition of body dysmorphia, it's the symptoms most of the time are someone that looks at least 30 times in the mirror during the day, that wear a lot of makeup, that take a lot of attention to their appearance, their way of clothing.
I probably look in the mirror at least 30 times a day, and I spend a long time in the gym, and I wear makeup literally every time I leave the house. But I don't know. It doesn't affect me in the same way it used to.
How the time both of you had body dysmorphia, we'll start with Shirley. How did it affect your day-to-day life?
I've been thinking about this, and I think the thing about the dys bit of the dysmorphia is disassociation with my body. And I think what happened for me was that my body was very separate from my mind. And I suppose that's how I kind of identify it as a mental health issue. Because what I would do, and I still do sometimes, but I think I manage it now, is that I would literally be on the outside of my body, looking at my body. It's almost like I was not attached to my body and feeling, you know, a particular way about it. I didn't feel good about my body, and so what I would do is disassociate from my body and look at it externally and make a judgment that that was not how I wanted to look. Yeah.
What about you, Stella?
It was just something which was pretty much always on my mind, like how I wanted to look. I guess still partly is like how I want to look compared to how I do currently look, and then kind of obsessing over how I don't look like that and how I could look like that. So when I was younger, yeah, I guess I'd worry about like, oh, like my stomach's not flat enough, my thighs are too big, like all these like things which I didn't like about my body. And then it would be like I'd go through the day constantly thinking about, oh, how will this affect my body? How would, like, where I wanted to be skinnier, it would be like, well, if I eat this, then this will mean that I'm not as skinny, or if I don't do this exercise, then I won't be like that. How it will affect my body. I was just basically obsessing over that all the time, and then it also affects the things you wear. Like, probably for like more than a year, I wouldn't wear any skinny clothes. Like, I wouldn't wear leggings, I wouldn't wear skinny jeans, I wouldn't wear like skirts, dresses, anything which showed my legs, because I thought my legs were fat, even though I was really underweight. And then, yeah, it just affects everything that you do throughout your day, basically. And then if you feel shit in public and you're constantly like you walk past a car and you check your reflection in like the screen of the car, or you walk past a window, you check your reflection in the window, like constantly thinking about how you look.
Stella, how do you think society affects people that suffer from it?
I think that people are trying to be more body positive, but I'm not sure they're doing it right, because there's like, oh, all bodies are good bodies, which is true, but then there's like certain bodies which obviously, like, there's a lot in the media about how women particularly should look a certain way, and men, like, either be like, there's kind of two sort of body types which are mainly portrayed in the media, which is very skinny, like model, or like thick, which is like slim but with big boobs and a big bum. And it's like, if you don't conform to one of those, then there's like, oh, your body's not nice or whatever, and that's just how you think. And then I think there is more of a, people are trying to be more body positive, but I don't know, it's not about being healthy, which is what it should be about.
Society as a whole is only just beginning to understand how a healthy mental health is the only source of healing when it comes to your body, and that if your mind isn't healthy and able and aware of particular ways of thinking, then you can do all the body work you want, but it's about the mind. And I think there's an awareness that is there, but I think in particular there needs to be education, and also with that education comes a recognition that other people feel that way, and that if people are educated about it, then they will also there's like a standpoint really that education isn't just about learning about facts and at school, it's about mental health education as well. And I think until that becomes part of the curriculum, we're not going to really overcome the various issues, mental health issues that happen. So, okay, I think the impact on society is probably, if you ask most women and men, most of them may well have an issue, but it's about their mental health, and that needs addressing.
Do you think, you said that you had it at some point, do you think it would have been easier if you knew what it was when you were affected by it?
Definitely, yeah. I think that, again, being educated about anything and having the language in order to describe how you're feeling, and for somebody to acknowledge that language and use that language with you can only be helpful in terms of your healing, mental health healing. Yeah.
The time that Stella was sick, how did it affect you, your day-to-day life?
Having a group of people to talk to was really helpful and supportive, because day-to-day life as a parent, treating and supporting someone that's got an eating disorder is really, really tough. And the natural instinct for any parent is to nurture their child, and knowing that you can't do that because their mental health is in such a way that any help that you try in the normal pathways of come on eat is not going to help. So again, having that support and education about actually what anorexia really does to children's minds and adults' minds, depending on when the onset is, was really helpful. But it was really destructive, and reaching somebody and having a relationship with someone that's got an eating disorder is really, really hard. And you feel like you've lost your child to something. And I think other parents described it like they've been kidnapped almost, taken hostage, or taken hostage by the disease, and you can't get to them, and communicating with them is really difficult as well. So yeah, pretty tough.
Stella, from all the professionals that you saw,
Yeah.
do you think they were really helpful?
I'd say some of them were and some of them weren't. It depends on who. I think it just depends on getting lucky, which is not what it should be. It should be that all the professionals there know how to help you and do help you. But especially when I was in hospital, some of them were absolutely awful. They didn't care. You could pretty much just hide food and they wouldn't notice. But some of them did care, and some of them were really lovely, and some of them genuinely really helped me a lot.
Do you think that they were more focused on your physical state and just trying to make you healthy, or more into your mental health?
Majority of them were definitely more focused on physical health rather than mental health.
Do you think it would have been better to have someone that were trying to get into the fun of the problem in your mind?
Yeah, because when they were just focused, well, I'd say through at least the first year and a half of when I was being treated, they were not giving me pretty much any proper therapy. Like they had art therapy, but personally I didn't find it helpful because I'd just draw a picture and then say it symbolised something, and I wouldn't talk about anything which was causing my eating disorder, anything which was on my mind, or anything to do with body image. So it was pretty much, majority of it was focused on my physical, not mental health. When I started to talk more about my mental health and actually had a therapist, I was able to start actually understanding why I'd had an eating disorder and why I felt the way I did. And then I was able to actually work on those things and work on like breaking behaviours because I wanted to, because my mental health was, like my confidence wasn't great, but it was improving slightly because I was beginning to understand what had caused it more and then deal with those things. And then once you start dealing with those things, I didn't need anorexia as much as I did before.
Shirley, you said that you went to support groups. Did you have to find them yourself, or did the professionals that were working with Stella help you as well?
First of all, getting Stella treatment was really, really difficult because it was based on BMI, and her BMI wasn't low enough, even though to me it was like her heart rate was down to 38 beats a minute. It was like her BMI is too high. So it was real push and a battle to get the support in the initial stages anyway.
Unless your BMI was under 30 and they wouldn't treat me.
But once we got onto a programme and Stella was hospitalised, and then we had a referral to the eating disorders unit, then we did get support. I felt that I had some support. I think there was support in terms of how I would physically support Stella in presenting an eating plan, but my mental health was going like it was really suffering, and I don't think there was any support for my mental health at that point, and reassurance that there are things, strategies that we can help you as a parent going through it. It was all about, we'll support you in putting this eating plan in place at home. That was the focus. It was the physical for me, and it wasn't about my mental health, and I could have done with that at that point. Yeah.
Stella, how do you think we could bring awareness to people? What needs to change?
Obviously more education, but I wouldn't say just education about eating disorders, because most people, I think, not in depth, but they do sort of know what eating disorders are. But I think more education about body dysmorphia and unhealthy behaviours around food, because I think people think that eating disorders are just like anorexia and bulimia, but there's a lot more eating disorders than that, and also a lot of people who don't necessarily have a diagnosable eating disorder have symptoms around eating disorders, which obviously aren't healthy, and also they obviously impact their mental health in a negative way. So if there's more education around what healthy eating actually is, and what feeling good about food actually is, and like having a good relationship with exercise and food, and also a good relationship with your body image, then that would mean that there was less, like people would be able to recognise this isn't healthy even before like an eating disorder would develop. And also more education about how to overcome bad body image, and also what realistically, like what you can, should, like what a healthy body is, instead of having completely unrealistic ideals.
What about you, Shirley? What do you think? How do you think we could bring awareness to people and what needs to change?
I think every secondary school should have a mental health nurse, and it's not a case of when something goes awry with one child, you can go to that mental health person in school. It's like that needs to be a programme that happens throughout the secondary school years, and also in the latter years of primary school that there is somebody there that is educating children about the feelings really that go with what your relationship is with your body. I think that would be great, just to have one person that is setting a curriculum and making sure that it's being delivered.
Stella, do you think that cinema portrays eating disorders and body dysmorphia in a realistic way? Do you feel represented?
Yeah, I've seen some documentaries, or not documentaries, but films and stuff about people with anorexia, and it is based upon people who are really, really underweight and in hospital. And it's sort of realistic, some of the behaviours, but also they're very, I feel they're like based upon one person's individual experience, when they should be more inclusive of every, like, a general experience rather than one particular person's, because eating disorders are very different for everybody, and if it's too specific, I don't feel like it really captures what they are like, because it suggests, for the majority of people watching this who don't probably know about eating disorders as much as I might do, then they'll probably assume that those behaviours are something which goes along with anyone who has that eating disorder, which isn't always true, because yeah, a lot of the time if they take the worst case scenario, then there's a lot of people who maybe don't have as many behaviours as that, but that doesn't mean that their eating disorder is any better. Yeah.
What about you, Shirley? Do you think it's portrayed realistically in cinema?
I agree with Stella on that, and also if you have feelings, unhealthy feelings about your body, and the character in the film is portraying one way of being or one sort of journey that they've been on, then it might well be that the people watching that might be affected by that maybe haven't got a little tick box and they go, well, I don't do that, so therefore I'm okay. Do you know what I mean? And I guess that goes in line with the idea that it's too specific to one sort of journey, and everybody's journey is different, and they might have very different feelings about certain behaviours. So yeah, I suppose realistic, but it's one person's journey, and I think there need to be more journeys. I was never hospitalised, but it would be really interesting to see a movie made about someone that's always suffered with it, hasn't been hospitalised, but an image of them standing outside their body, looking at their body, going, "You look shit." You can see that being able to sort of be translated into a film, and that would be another way of exploring other people's pathways, really.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.